And that is the address that President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to make, the official address to the 12th Parliament joint sitting of members of the National Assembly and the Senate. Joining me in studio, David Ole Sangok, who is nominated Member of Parliament for Jubilee. Thank you very much for coming in. As well as Opio Andai, who is the MP for Ugunja. But quickly, before we talk about what we expect tomorrow, I would want you to react to something that President Uhuru Kenyatta said a short while ago while he was addressing members of the Ukambani community, one of them being the issue of impeachment. He says that if Raila Odinga wins the presidential poll, they still do have the numbers in both the National Assembly and the Senate, and they could impeach him in, what, 2 or 3 months? What is your immediate reaction to that?
The president is just becoming very genuine and giving Kenyans the facts on the table because they are there, and all Kenyans are aware of the facts that the Jubilee Party have majority both in the National Assembly, in the Senate, and in fact in most of the county assemblies. So the president was simply giving the facts as they are.
So you think he's stating the obvious?
The obvious, and does not mean that Raila will win. Of course, he will not win, but it is good to prepare him that although you said, you know, some of these people have what we call short memories, and they suffer from a very complex disease that is called dementia. They forget so easily. And that is why it is good to remind them of the reality on the ground. Because you remember the other day he said, Raila himself said, that if Songo is elected, I will resign. He said in public. Now Songo is elected. And now he's going again to the polls. I don't know for what. So it's good to tell them.
But talking about impeaching a president, what really would be the grounds, regardless of whether the numbers would be there or not?
Of course, the grounds are obvious. Because we know that Raila is not ready to accept defeat. He may end up probably going to the streets as usual.
Is Jubilee ready to accept defeat? In the event that
we have already accepted a court verdict that took our genuinely hard-earned win.
Okay.
Yes,
let me engage a few and I here. I know from the comments that I've been seeing on the social media, a number of Kenyans don't seem to be very happy with those statements from the president.
Firstly, Kisa, I want to advise my friend here. Before I advise him, I want to welcome him to Parliament. Yeah, but advise him to take time and understand the rules of the game. You know, Parliament is a house of rules and procedures and records. And the mere fact that Jubilee, for now, and mark my words, for now, enjoys some majority, does not necessarily mean that they can marshal the 2/3 majority required to carry out an impeachment. You know, and I want to revisit the words for now because, you know, a number of those constituencies where Jubilee supposedly won, we have lodged very serious petitions, which we hope will overturn those elections, those wins, in quotes. And therefore, the issue of whether they are in a position to impeach President Raila Amolo Odinga is wishful thinking. From where I see. But then,
are we speaking hypothetically or?
No, he's not the president. You
know,
you cannot say President Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga is not a president. He was just a former prime minister.
But my assumption is once if the impeachment comes to being, then it would be if he had been elected.
The impeachment will be against President Raila Odinga. My friend,
so it's a hypothetical. Okay.
So that is wishful thinking from where I sit. But I'm encouraged that Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta is already thinking of a Raila win. It's good to socialize himself to the fact that Raila will be winning. That's good for the country. But more importantly is the fact that even for impeachment to happen, there is a certain threshold that has been met. You know, there are grounds upon which a president can be impeached. You know, Kisa. Impeachment is not just a question of waking up one morning and putting forth a motion on the floor of the House. There are grounds, constitutionally set grounds for a president to be impeached. Okay, and I don't see any of those situations arising insofar as President Raila Amolo Odinga is concerned here.
Your thoughts?
You know, it's so funny. My friend here is trying to show that he was in Parliament the other time and that he knows more of the rules of the House and the games that are played there. Let me assure you, we are aware of what is happening in Parliament. We have been in this movement for a long time. I've been the chairman, National Council for Persons with Disability, for your own information, and I've led Kenyans, 6 million Kenyans living with disability, who come across from all over the country, including your own constituency. But my thought is very simple. If you think the election was unfair, the first thing my brother here, Opio, should do is now to resign as an MP, because then he was given a certificate by an institution that they don't believe in. You know this double standard, and that's why the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, because we don't have two presidents, we don't have two centers of power. Raila have never been a president of this republic, will never be a president of this republic. So when our president states the facts that even if you are to rule, it will be difficult for you to rule, because we need also the House, Parliament as well as Senate to implement our own manifesto.
We know that President Mwai Kibaki ruled in 2007 with a minority in Parliament.
Hey, Kisa, who told you a minority?
Yeah.
You know,
he
was
didn't have
joined by I think Orange Democratic Party of Kenya, I think something like that, that was led by this person called Kalonzo. You know Kalonzo.
All right.
Yes.
I would want us to get into the reopening of Parliament and the address by the President at the joint sitting expected tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. First question, do we expect members of Parliament from the opposition to show up?
Yeah, before I get to that, Akisa, there's this tired line that has been rehearsed for quite some time now, that MPs who feel strongly that the IBC had shortcomings need to resign from their seats. You know, we have said a number of times that the matter at hand, which has been adjudicated upon, is the matter of presidential election. We've also said that concerning other elective positions, including those of members of parliament and governors and senators, those who felt that elections were unfair have gone to court, including very many of our members, because we strongly believe that a number of those elections were also rigged. And the court process will take its course. If and when the judgments are delivered, we believe a number of those Jubilee-held seats will revert to us. Okay? But
so you think, from my understanding, eventually you think you will be able to get the numbers once we are done with all these
let me tell you, Akisa, apart from the numbers that will come to us upon by elections, which will ensue, once Raila Amolo Odinga is declared president on or about 17th of October, a number of these fellas who are sitting in parliament on the Jubilee side will be crossing the floor to join the progressive forces. I can tell you.
You know, it is
where
good
there
to
is
dream.
freedom,
Kisa,
where there is latitude, where there is
this guy is a dreamer.
all the opportunities for growth. But coming to your question about
whether you will be
the
attending
House
the joint
sitting tomorrow, the joint House sitting, which is scheduled for tomorrow, we have said that we, members of parliament on the NASA side, will not possibly be in the chambers for that session on account of a number of things. Chief of which is, you know, Article 132, sub-Article 1A, okay, which supposedly gives the president the powers to address the opening of a new parliament, must be read together with other relevant articles of the Constitution. One of which is Article 134, another one is 142, and including the standing orders. I have said this, and I want to repeat it here, that the framers of the Constitution could not have envisaged a situation where a president who is serving under temporary incumbency terms would be called upon to address a joint sitting of parliament when that same president who is lame duck constitutionally, okay, is fighting to save his skin on the campaign trail for an election which is happening in the next 4 weeks or so. That couldn't have been the intention of the framers of the Constitution. And therefore, for us to go and sit and listen to a speech from someone who is competing against our party leader in an election which is being held in under one month is politically not tenable. That is our position. And we have said that Uhuru Kenyatta is free to go and address that gathering tomorrow, which gathering will actually be a Jubilee parliamentary group meeting, okay, even though sitting under House.
So we will not be seeing any member of parliament attending that particular session?
About an hour or so ago, the NASA coalition has given a position, official position, that NASA members of parliament will not be in that sitting. Of course, I can't speak for everybody else, but personally, even if that statement were not forthcoming,
you still wouldn't show up?
I wouldn't have shown up.
Okay. Does it worry you? Does it worry you that this will look like a parliamentary group meeting?
It will not worry me at all. And my friend here, Opio, Honorable Opio, is saying that the writers of Constitution did not envisage, a lot of English, and he really does not understand the meaning of these words. Are you now using spiritual eyes to see what the writers of Constitution wanted to write? Or, you may be using spiritual eyes. For us, we are using normal eyes. We are reading the normal Constitution, which state that the president, we will never have a vacuum in our country in terms of the presidency. The president will only have another president when the new one is sworn in. And the other one hand over the instrument of power to the incoming president, which we have not done as a country. So we still have a president, and we don't have a vacuum. And it will not threaten us. As far as NASA, are you talking on behalf of NASA?
He said it's NASA's official stand.
Is it ODM? Is it Wiper?
I think he's just mentioned that it's NASA's official stand.
NASA. Now, when it comes to NASA, we have been threatened severally as Jubilee. The first time that they threatened us was during the swearing in, that they will not come for the swearing in. He is sworn in. And they threatened. They went all over the media saying that they will not attend the swearing in ceremony. He is sworn in.
So you're not threatened as Jubilee?
So we are not threatened. And the other thing is that they also threatened that they will not participate in the election of the speaker. As we speak now, the Speaker of the National Assembly, we have a speaker. We have a speaker in the National Assembly, Muturi, and also Wetangula, who is a core principal, voted when there was the election of the Speaker of the Senate. So their threats we are used to, and let them continue threatening. But we are not worried. We will go to Parliament.
I would want him to react to that. Because and as you do that, President Uhuru Kenyatta has also weighed in on this and said that it will make no difference whether members of Parliament from NASA come into this or attend this particular sitting or not. Your reaction?
I've been a little bit restrained, giving room to my colleague here to get opportunity to be inducted, really, onto what all these things are about. People can go out there ranting that we shall go ahead and do the session without NASA MPs. That is fine. But you see, there's one thing that our boycott will be denying you. We shall be denying that supposed speech by Uhuru Kenyatta, the legitimacy that it for sure does not deserve. That is one. Because otherwise, if our boycott didn't mean a thing to them, they wouldn't be bothering talking about it every now and then. Secondly, you've just thought about the issue of election of the speaker. First of all, there was no official communication from NASA that would boycott the swearing in. I've said this a number of times, that NASA as a coalition did take a position that its MPs would take up their seats in Parliament, eventually. The only way MPs would take up their seats is by being sworn in. So the issue of NASA boycotting and swearing in was neither here nor there. But then, what we did was to boycott the ensuing election of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. And you can see our boycott necessitated the election of the Speaker to go to second round on account of the fact that Jubilee on its own cannot marshal the 2/3 required to elect even a speaker. So all this talk, all this bravado is for nothing.
Excuse me.
It's basically a side
Let
show.
him finish.
Yeah. So Uhuru Kenyatta can tomorrow go and address that sitting in parliament. Fine. Good enough. But the question you need to ask yourself, what will he be telling parliament and the nation? Because ordinarily, in ordinary circumstances, under ordinary circumstances, when a president addresses a sitting of parliament, whether joint or otherwise, he is supposed to outline his agenda or programs or plans for the country for a given period of time, be it a session or a term of parliament.
Yes.
Now, tomorrow, Uhuru Kenyatta will be outlining an agenda for what? As who? Yet we know in less than 5 weeks, God willing, he will be home. And Raila Odinga will be the president. So that is our position. So that contradiction is what we need to remove. We are speaking philosophically. That we don't need just to talk about or numbers, or we shall do it without you. We have used to your threats. We don't just issue empty threats. We are serious fellas. Okay. We are serious people.
No. He have been using empty threats. Like now he is talking about there will be no legitimacy in the president's speech to the National Assembly. Is there legitimacy in us, whether we went to the second round, electing a speaker in the name of Muturi? Yes, he is the Speaker of the National Assembly, the third most powerful person in this country. Whether you like it or not, that is legitimate. That is in law. So even tomorrow, it will be legitimate for the president to address members of parliament, whether some of them, because I'm sure not all NASA MPs will boycott parliament. Some of them, who of course are hardliners and don't want progress in this country, may not attend parliament. And we'll go on and we shall have all the legitimacy. And then the other issue is that he's talking about as who. Uhuru Kenyatta will address parliament as who? As the president. We don't have a vacuum. And he will outline the issues and the direction that he wants the country to move on in the next 5 years.
So what do you expect to come out of that particular address? What are some of the specific things you expect to come out of that address by the president?
Of course, our development agenda, our infrastructure development of this country, making the country a more developed country in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education, and even in manifesto. There are some issues that we share with NASA, only that they copied our manifesto. So when we go on and give Kenyans the agenda that we have in the next 5 years, yes, whether President Kenyatta will be re-elected or not, the country will move forward. And the country will still have the same workforce, the same public servants. We will implement the programs of the government. So when my friend is talking about it as who, as a president, a sitting president for that matter.
Honorable Opio, what is the end game for NASA? Once you boycott this particular joint sitting expected tomorrow, what really are we seeking to achieve with this?
You know, before I come to that again,
yes,
there's something I need to educate my colleague on.
Don't educate me because I'm already educated myself.
Progressive minds in this world continue learning, even when they grow old. This notion that Uhuru Kenyatta is enjoying the full powers of the presidency that he has enjoyed over the last 5 years or so is fallacious. Fallacious in the sense that the Constitution is very clear under Article 134 that Uhuru Kenyatta, as we speak, cannot perform a lot of other functions which would have performed initially. That must sink home, you know. But secondly, I have said that you can only outline an agenda which you intend to implement as a political party or coalition. It is not a state agenda. It is a government agenda, okay? Our governments are run by political parties. In this case, Jubilee or NASA, okay? So if he outlines a so-called agenda tomorrow, a so-called Jubilee agenda tomorrow, and then in 5 weeks' time he's home. So what a waste of time, what a charity. That is our position. Now, what do we intend to achieve? Coming back to your question. I have said that by boycotting that session, that sitting, we'll have denied Uhuru Kenyatta's speech the legitimacy that it craves for. Secondly, we would have sent out a very strong message to the country that you cannot reduce Parliament to a platform for politicking. Politicking in the sense that since there's no agenda you can outline, constitutionally speaking, you will simply be taking airtime to try to campaign, essentially, through parliament, which is not right as a constitutional democracy. We need to start asking some very hard questions. In fact, I've already suggested in my earlier statement today that one of the things that needs to be looked into very quickly in this constitution is that provision under Article 132 that requires the president to address the opening of parliament. In our view, it is superfluous. In constitutional democracy, where the three arms of government are supposed to be checking one another, it's pointless whether the president addresses the opening of parliament or not. But even then, what confirms my fears is that even as we speak, the same constitution plus the standing orders provide for no sanctions whatsoever if the president fails to make that speech during the opening of the parliament. It provides for no sanctions. That tells you, if tomorrow Uhuru Kenyatta doesn't appear in parliament, parliament will open, constitutions will continue, and nothing will happen. So what I mean? So legally speaking, constitutionally speaking, it is an unnecessary requirement in the constitution. That we shall be addressing sooner rather than later. But for now, we are making a political statement. And a political statement we must make, because we are in a competition for power with Jubilee. And we can't see Jubilee, or watch Jubilee misuse power and misuse state resources with impunity. That today, we have seen an entrenchment of a culture which we thought died with the old Kanu regime. A culture where delegations, of tribal delegations, are trooping in State House and being given airtime, national airtime, okay, on national television, funded by taxpayers. That is KBC. That's something again we shall be addressing. So these are some of the things that if we don't speak to, we shall eventually regress to the era that we don't really wish to regress to as a country.
You want to say something?
First of all, if by any chance you did not get a chance to go to State House, don't bring your bitterness in the national television like this one, KTN. And the other issue is that, please, my brother, don't tell me you are educating me. Because you are just in parliament for one term, you now think that you have known everything. My brother, the only thing you can educate me is to be in opposition and probably having slogans that have no meaning in the literal world, like Tibib Tialala, which may be demonic.
Looking at the numbers that are there in
my friend
Parliament.
cannot insist on educating me. Educating me on what? We wrote this constitution. I was part of the people who wrote this constitution. And he cannot come and say, simply because you got an opportunity to be in parliament. And he was actually in parliament, always opposing everything. So he learned nothing, absolutely nothing. And that is why every day when he comes here, he's just opposing everything. Now, he's saying the constitution does not give sanction to the president not to address. Why is it in the constitution that the president should address the first sitting of parliament? Whether there is no sanction or not, somebody who is morally all right will follow the constitution and come and address the house. If then Raila may now say, if I'm not punished here, I will not do this. If I don't build a standard gauge railway in Kenya, I will not be punished, because there is no also sanction of punishing the president if it does not develop the country in terms of infrastructure. So maybe if you are then your leader is ready to boycott the constitution simply because there is no such sanction, that is up to you as NASA. But for us, the president will follow the constitution to the letter. And tomorrow, the address of the president will have a lot of legitimacy. And then coming to the issue of delegates going to State House. Why do you call it State House? Because it is the house of the state, of this country, of Kenya. And all Kenyans are welcome to go to State House, state their issues, and probably in our manifesto as Jubilee, we may put our priorities and change our priorities. Even, in fact, members from Mukambani may come and say, okay, like today they were in State House. Okay, for us in Mukambani, what we need is water, because our land is dry. And then people from Kiambu will come and say, what we need fertilizer for us to be able to cultivate our land. So we welcome all delegates across the country, even from Siaya, Bondo, from Raila's place, because as a government of Jubilee, we are not partisan.
Well, I guess it's true. Actually, I understand now. I will avoid educating my colleague. Apparently, it's beyond education. But having said that, what we need to come to terms with is that this country has undergone a serious transformation in terms of the entrenchment of democratic culture, in terms of constitutional principles, and in terms of the way we do go about our things. And what we must resist totally are attempts to reverse the clock of change. That's what I'm saying in short. Nobody stops anyone from going to State House anytime. But you cannot transform State House platform into a campaign platform.
Okay.
A partisan campaign. That's what we're saying in short. In fact, if you look at the Constitution itself, on the values and principles of governance, you'll be shocked at how dangerously we are floating the Constitution. But
David, your thoughts?
Yes. The issue of reversing the clock.
Do you think that the president is selfishly using State House for campaigns, like he says?
Never. If then Kenyans are not accessible to State House, then it should not be called State House. It should be called Uhuru's home. But since it is State House, it is a house for all of us. It's our own house as a country. And we are not in any way trying to reverse the clock as Jubilee. In fact, if there is people who are reverting the clock, it is them. It's the NASA brigade. Because they are reversing the clock in many other issues. Remember that we were to go to court after the election. They did not go straight to court. They went to streets, and we lost lives. Blood was shed for Kenyans. In 2007, they used, in fact, Raila used the bridge of dead bodies to access to this Nusumkate, Nusumukeka kind of government arrangement. And that is what he's still trying to do. So here they are the ones that are reversing the clock. And allow me to ask my brother here, my learned brother. I want to educate you now.
please do.
There is this thing called slogans of political parties. In Jubilee, we have what we call tuko pamoja, meaning one kacha chel in your language, your mother tongue. In my mother tongue is Kiti the Nebo. And then there is also Kanu, Nyayo, you see, footstep. This thing of yours of Tibib Tialala, what does it mean? Does it, you know, in any way, we may be shocked that our country and our citizens are being recruited into a very dangerous, demonic Illuminati cult. Because it's only witch doctors who talks in languages that are not understood in our own setup, in the whole world, because we don't know the meaning of this thing. I heard that somebody saying that Tialala is a Greece goddess of war. And actually, this guy is in terms of
David, this is deviating, but I will let him respond because I want us really to talk about Parliament,
now,
not
allow
Tibims and
me to
Tialalas
talk
of
about
this
the
world.
substance. You know, let's come back to the core matter now. The matter of opening of Parliament, the 12th Parliament tomorrow. Assuming Uhuru Kenyatta was to give a speech tomorrow, I'm assuming, because I don't know whether he will turn up or not.
He will turn up.
Now, what would one expect to be in that speech? That's the most important thing in my view. But I can tell you from where I sit, and given the experience I've had as a country with the Jubilee administration under one Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, it would be too optimistic to expect anything meaningful in that speech. Why do I say so? We have had similar speeches read on the floor of Parliament. The most famous one was the one, I think, of 2015 or 14, when he read out the so-called list of shame of people who, in his view, were culpable of corruption and needed to have stepped aside for action to be taken against them in court. What became of it? It's a disaster. So, tomorrow, I can bet that out of the very critical issues that are of concern to this country as we speak, chief of which is the matter of corruption. Corruption still ranks very high up because it has become a phenomenon under the Jubilee administration. The second one is the runaway insecurity. The third one is tribalism and nepotism, which has been entrenched to levels which are unimaginable under this administration. You can be sure that those three and other key issues that are of concern to the country and the citizens of this country will be given lip service in tomorrow's speech.
All right,
Okay.
quickly.
And you can come back tomorrow evening or
Yes,
or day
those
after.
are your expectations.
Yes.
You talked
The
about
list of shame.
you talked about your expectations as well.
Yes.
Quickly, because we don't have time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to assess the 11th Parliament and why you think the 12th Parliament that you will be part of will be better.
First of all, he talked about the list of shame. President Uhuru Kenyatta made sure that those who are in the list of shame, 5 cabinet secretaries stepped aside. The rest is left for the investigation authorities together with our judges, our courts. They did not do their part. I don't know why is he now here blaming President Uhuru Kenyatta. You talked about corruption. The most corrupt outfit is NASA.
Kindly,
You
let's
remember?
just get back to the conversation. I would want the
Okay, and
assessment of the 11th Parliament.
Let him tell us where the teachers' money went.
Yes, as
Because
we wrap
also
up,
did the
your
fundraising
quick assessment of
teachers.
the 11th
Now,
Parliament.
The 11th Parliament did its job very well, and what we are aware is that they passed very good laws and in terms of corruption, and they fought against corruption. And we are proud that there was that 11th Parliament that was earning a huge amount of money. Now Sarah Serem have come with a pay cut, and as members of the 12th Parliament, we are willing to accept the pay cut so that Kenya can move forward.
Akisa, the 11th Parliament was essentially the first parliament under the new constitution. And it did a lot of experiments. But one unfortunate thing that characterized that parliament was the lack of understanding of the role of parliamentarians insofar as oversight of the executive is concerned. Because as we speak, Kenya being a purely presidential system or government, there's really no opposition or government side in the House. What we have is the majority and the minority side.
Yeah.
Both sides have got a noble responsibility to provide oversight to the executive. That was lacking, I think deliberately, because it was fashionable for people to carry themselves as belonging to government, while in actual fact, in the House, there's no government.
Do you think the 12th Parliament will perform better?
I hope it will perform better, but mark the word hope. Secondly, what the 12th Parliament needs to do when it gets down to business, serious business, are 2 things. One is to pass the 2/3 gender bill or law, to make that requirement, that gender balance, a reality.
Okay.
The 11th Parliament failed on account of the lip service that was given by the Jubilee side. That's a long story.
All right.
Finally, the 12th Parliament needs to go down in history as a parliament which entrenched devolution. We need to be able to master the courage and pass a legislation to enhance the monies going to the counties.
Okay.
Yes.
Kisa, how can
All right,
the 12th
quickly,
Parliament...
unfortunately, we'll have to
I'm
end it
telling
at
you,
that.
how
Yes.
can the 12th Parliament start its work on a good footing while they are boycotting the first?
We'll see how that goes. David Sankok is the nominated senator for Jubilee, nominated member of parliament for Jubilee. We have member of parliament for Ugunja, Opio and I. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in.